Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Dracula. Specifically, we are now doing assignment number 11. I'm going to read for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then you're going to finish it up, of course. I'll tell you now that the pages on the online version for assignment number 11 span for the online version, page 312 to page 346. Of course, it doesn't matter which version you read, as long as you answer all the questions for assignment number 11, you're fine. But if you are online, you will stop at page 346 of the online version. Now, we just have to talk about this very quickly. The end of assignment number 10 was when the characters now cannot deny anymore that this is a vampire story. That's what's happening right now, is dealing with vampires and the undead, of course, because they had to deal with the undead Lucy, and in fact, they had to destroy her. They had to kill her. If you can say kill her, because she's already undead, but you get my point. In fact, it was a very tough time for all of them, specifically the husband of Lucy, Arthur, but also for the other men as well. In fact, let me read this last paragraph on page 310. Arthur bent and kissed her, and then we sent him and Quincy out of the tomb. The professor and I sawed the top off the stake, leaving the point of it in the body. We've seen that before in different poems. Remember the idea of the body going into it? We saw that in the Old Woman of Berkeley. We saw that in the Vampire number 1. Then we cut off the head and filled the mouth with garlic. We soldered up the leaden coffin, screwed on the coffin lid, and gathered up our belongings, came away. All right, so I mean, just think about it. I'm just repeating what they did to her body. And this is going to cause nightmares for some of these guys, probably for the rest of their lives, but they did the right thing. They absolutely had to stop Lucy, cut off her head, filled her mouth with garlic. I mean, how awful is that? But they had to do that because they knew Lucy was going to continue eating children and probably later would have come and tried to get at them, if not sooner. So let's read assignment number 11. I'm on page 312. It is the beginning of chapter 17. Dr. Seward's diary continued. When we arrived at the Berkeley Hotel, Van Helsing found a telegram waiting for him. And coming up by train, Jonathan at Whitby, important news, Mina Harker. The professor was delighted. That wonderful Madam Mina, he said, pearl among women. She arrived, but I cannot stay. She must go to your house, friend John. You must meet her at the station. Telegraph her en route so that she may be prepared. When the wire was dispatched, he had a cup of tea. Over it, he told me of a diary kept by Jonathan Harker when abroad and gave me a typewritten copy of it, as also of Mrs. Harker's diary at Whitby. Take these, he said, and study them well. All right, now this is huge. He's getting a first-hand account of Count Dracula from Jonathan from that month that he spent in his castle. And he's also getting Mina Harker's diary as well. So now he's getting these first-hand accounts of what's going on so they can more clearly understand what to do. Take these, he said, and study them well. When I have returned, you will be master of all the facts, and we can then be better enter on our inquisition. Keep them safe, for in them much of treasure. You will need all your faith, even you who have had such an experience as that of today. What is here told? He laid in his hand heavily and gravely on the packets of paper as he spoke. May be the beginning of the end to you and me and many another, or it may sound the death knell of the undead who walk the earth. So basically saying, if we don't take care of this, then we're probably going to die. But if we do it right, then maybe we'll end vampires on the earth. Let's find out. Read all, I pray you, with an open mind, and if you can add in any way to the story here told, to do so, for it is all important. You have kept a diary of all these so strange things, is it not so? Yes. Then we shall go through all these together when we meet. Pardon me. He then made ready for his departure and shortly drove off to Liverpool Street. I took my way to Paddington, where I arrived about 15 minutes before the train came in. The crowd melted away after the bustling fashion common to arrival platforms, and I was beginning to feel uneasy, lest I might miss my guest, when a sweet-faced, dainty-looking girl stepped up to me, and after a quick glance said, Dr. Sword, is it not? And you are Miss Harker, I answered at once, whereupon she held out her hand. I knew you from the description of poor dear Lucy, but she stopped suddenly and a quick blush overspread her face. The blush that rode into my own cheeks somehow set us both at ease, for it was a tacit answer to her own. I got her luggage, which included a typewriter, and we took the underground to Fenchurch Street, after I had sent a wire to my housekeeper to have a sitting room and a bedroom prepared at once for Mrs. Harker. In due time we arrived. She knew, of course, that the place was a lunatic asylum, but I could see that she was unable to repress a shudder when we entered. She told me that, if she might, she would come presently to my study, as she had much to say. So here I'm finishing my entry in my phonograph diary whilst I await her. As yet I have not had the chance of looking at the papers which Van Helsing left with me, though they lie open before me. I must get her interested in something so that I may have an opportunity of reading them. She does not know how precious time is or what a task we have in hand. I must be careful not to frighten her. Here she is. Okay, now, she does not know the truth of everything, what happened with Lucy and all that. That last line again, I must be careful not to frighten her. Oh, dear. What would be worse, frightening her or not telling her the truth and then she goes out and gets killed? Again, they're worried about the sensibilities of women, which is just stupid crap, of course, because women are just as tough as men, if not tougher. But again, this is the 1800s, 1900s. It's just how they work. Mina Harker's journal, 1920, September 29th. After I had tidied myself, I went down to Dr. Seward's study. At the door, I paused a moment, for I thought I heard him talking with someone. As, however, he had pressed me to be quick, I knocked at the door, and on his calling out, "Come in," I entered. So this is pretty cool. The last entry was Dr. Seward's entry describing Mina coming and talking to him. And now we're getting Mina's own journal entry after she went down and talked to him. So now we're going to find out what the doctor told her and what she thinks and believes is happening. To my intense surprise, there was no one with him. He was quite alone, and on the table opposite him was what I knew at once from the description to be a phonograph. I had never seen one and was much interested. So basically, she heard him talking in there. She thought he was with somebody, but he's doing a verbal diary. He's talking into like a record player, and then they record it, and then they play it back to them. It's just a verbal diary. "I hope I did not keep you waiting," I said, "but I stayed at the door as I heard you talking. I thought there was someone with you." "Oh," he replied with a smile, "it was only entering my diary." "Your diary?" I asked him with surprise. "Yes," he answered. "I keep it in this." As he spoke, he laid his hand on the phonograph. I felt quite excited over it and blurted out, "Why, this beats even shorthand. May I hear it say something?" "Certainly," he replied with alacrity and stood up to put it in train for speaking. Then he paused and a troubled look overspread his face. "The fact is," he began awkwardly, "I only keep my diary in it, and it is entirely, almost entirely, about my cases. It may be awkward, that is, I mean." So basically, he doesn't want her to hear what he has been saying about Lucy. I think he wants to hide her from it still. He stopped, and I tried to help him out of his embarrassment. "You helped to attend dear Lucy at the end. Let me hear how she died. For all that I know of her, I shall be very grateful. She was very, very dear to me." To my surprise, he answered, with an horror-struck look in his face, "Tell you of her death? Not for the wide world." I think the doctor is still traumatized by what happened that day in the tomb. "Why not?" I asked, for some grave, terrible feeling was coming over me. And she doesn't understand. Why would a doctor be afraid, horrified to describe the death of somebody to somebody? She doesn't know what happened. The whole, had to stop her, cut the head off, blah, blah, blah. "Why not?" I asked, for some grave, terrible feeling was overcoming me. Again, he paused, and I could see that he was trying to invent an excuse. At length, he stammered out, "You see, I do not know how to pick out any particular part of the diary." Even while he was speaking, an idea dawned upon him, and he said with an unconscious simplicity in a different voice and with the naivety of a child, "That's quite true, upon my honor, honest Indian." I could not but smile, at which he grimaced. "I gave myself away that time," he said. "But do you know that, although I have kept the diary for months past, it never once struck me how I was going to find any particular part of it in case I wanted to look it up? By this time, my mind was made up that the diary of a doctor who attended Lucy might have something to add to the sum of our knowledge of that terrible being. And I said boldly, 'Then, Dr. Seward, you had better let me copy it out for you on my typewriter.'" See, this is interesting. He doesn't know that she does know about Dracula, because she's already talked about it and read Jonathan's notes. So she's saying that, "Dude, just let me listen to it and I'll type it out, so then you have an easier way to read these things, and then we'd know more." He grew to a positively deathly pallor and said, No, for all the world. I wouldn't let you know that terrible story." And it was terrible. My intuition was right. For a moment, I thought, and as my eyes ranged the room, unconsciously looking for something or some opportunity to aid me, they lit on a great batch of typewriting on the table. His eyes caught the look in mine, and without his thinking, followed their direction. As they saw the parcel, he realized my meaning. You do not know me," I said. "When you have read those papers, my own diary and my husband's also, which I have typed, you will know me better. I have not faltered in giving every thought of my own heart in this case, but of course you do not know me yet, and I must not expect you to trust me so far." He is certainly a man of noble stature. Poor dear Lucy was right about him. So Mina looks and sees that on his desk, he has Jonathan's notes and her notes, but he hasn't read them yet. So she's she understands now that he won't tell her the truth of Lucy because he doesn't want to involve her in all this. But what she's saying to him is, dude, I'm already involved in all this. I already know pretty much everything. In fact, I know the other half of it. Why don't you tell me this half of it and maybe we can figure something out together? You are quite right. I did not trust you. I'm sorry. He is certainly a man of noble nature. Poor dear Lucy was right about him. He stood up and opened up a large drawer in which were arranged in order a number of hollow cylinders of metal covered with dark wax and said, you are quite right. I did not trust you because I did not know you, but I know you now. And let me say that I should have known you long ago. I know that Lucy told you of me. She told me of you too. May I make the only atonement in my power? Take the cylinders and hear them. The first half dozen of them are personal to me, and they will not horrify you. Then you will know me better. Dinner will by then be ready. In the meantime, I shall read her some of these documents, and she'll be better able to understand certain things. All right, so they're basically trading their knowledge. He's going to read Jonathan's diary and her diary, while she is going to listen to his diary. So now they won't have to talk to each other anymore about what each other knows because they're going to know it. He carried the phonograph himself up to my sitting room and adjusted it for me. Now I shall learn something pleasant, I am sure, for it will tell me the other side of a true love episode of which I know one side already. She's referring to the fact that the first six are going to just talk about his feelings and probably talk about how much he loved Lucy and how sad he was when she rejected him. I don't think she's ready for what she's going to hear about what happened in the tomb. Dr. Seward's diary, 29th of September. I was so absorbed in that wonderful diary of Jonathan Harker and that of his wife that I let the time run on without thinking. Mrs. Harker was not down when the maid. All right, so now we're back to Dr. Seward's diary. Okay, so we switched back over. Miss Harker was not down when the maid came to announce dinner, so I said, she's possibly tired. Let dinner wait an hour. And I went on with my work. See, she's late because she's up there listening to your diary, dude. I had just finished Mrs. Harker's diary when she came in. She looked sweetly pretty, but very sad, and her eyes were flushed with crying. This has somehow moved me much. Of late, I have had cause for tears, God knows, but the relief of them was denied me. And now the sight of those sweet eyes, brightened by recent tears, went straight to my heart. So I said as gently as I could, I greatly fear I have distressed you. Oh, no, not distressed me, she replied, but I've been more touched than I can say by your grief. That is a wonderful machine, but it is cruelly true. It told me in its very tones the anguish of your heart. It was like a soul crying out to Almighty God. No one must hear them spoken ever again. See, I've tried to be useful. I've copied out the words on my typewriter, and none other need hear now your heartbeat as I did. No one ever need know, shall ever know, I said in a low voice. She laid her hand on mine and said very gravely, but they must. Must, but why, I asked. Because it is part of the terrible story, a part of poor Lucy's death and all that led to it. Because in the struggle which we have had before us to rid the earth of this terrible monster, we must have all the knowledge and all the help which we can get. I think that the cylinders which you gave me contained more than you intended me to know, but I can see that there are in your record many lights to this dark mystery. You will let me help, will you not? I know all up to a certain point. And I see already, though your diary only took me to 7 September, how poor Lucy was beset and how her terrible doom was being wrought out. Jonathan and I have been working day and night since Professor Van Helsing saw us. He has gone to Whitby to get more information, and he will be here tomorrow to help us. We need have no secrets amongst us. Working together and with absolute trust, we can surely be stronger than if some of us were in the dark. See, she is so right. She's saying we need to get everybody because Jonathan knows more, right? I know different things. You know different things. So we need to write it all down, and we need to share it together because we are never going to beat this monster if we don't know everything. She looked at me so appealingly and at the same time manifested such courage and resolution in her bearing that I gave in at once to her wishes. You shall, I said. Do as you like in the matter. God forgive me if I do wrong. There are terrible things yet to learn of. But if you have so far traveled on the road to poor Lucy's death, you will not be content, I know, to remain in the dark. Nay, the very end may give you a gleam of peace. Come, there is dinner. We must keep one another strong for what is before us. You know, he's right, because what he's saying is if you don't know the whole story, you might now think that she is a vampire out there doing terrible things as well. That they need to tell her that Lucy has been stopped. Come, there is dinner. We must keep, oh, I lost my spot. Oh no, hold on. Sorry about that. I pressed the wrong button. I think it's this page right here. Hold on. Sorry, everybody. I lost my spot. Told me the very tones anguish of your heart. I know. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. All right, it's down here. I will find it. Okay. And the phonograph, so that after dinner, I came to Dr. Did that too. Hold on, everybody. This is a waste of your time. And all that. All right, here we go. Sorry. Come, here is dinner on page 328. We must keep one another strong for what is before us. We have a cruel and dreadful task. When you have eaten, you shall learn the rest, and I shall answer any questions you ask if there be anything which you do not understand, though it was apparent to us who were present. Mina Harker's journal, 29th of September. After dinner, I came with Dr. Seward to his study. He brought back the phonograph from my room, and I took a chair and arranged the phonograph so that I could touch it without getting up, and showed me how to stop it in case I would want to pause. Then he very thoughtfully took a chair with his back to me so I might be as free as possible and began to read. I put the forked metal to my ears and listened. When the terrible story of Lucy's death and all that followed was done, I lay back in my chair powerless. Fortunately, I am not of a fainting disposition. When Dr. Sword saw me, he jumped up with a horrified exclamation and hurriedly took a case bottle from the cupboard, gave me some brandy, which in a few minutes somewhat restored me. My brain was all in a whirl, and only that there came through all the multitude of horrors the holy ray of light that my dear Lucy was at last at peace. I do not think I could have borne it without making a scene. It is all so wild and mysterious and strange that if I had not known Jonathan's experience in Transylvania, I could not have believed. As it was, I didn't know what to believe, and so got out of my difficulty by attending to something else. I took the cover off my typewriter and said to Dr. Seward, "Let me write this all out now. We must be ready for Dr. Van Helsing when he comes. I have sent a telegram to Jonathan to come on here when he arrives in London from Whitby. In this manner, dates are everything, and I think that if we get all of our material ready and have every item put in chronological order, we shall have done much." So Mina is incredibly smart. She says, you know what? I need to type all this out, and we need to go through all the dates and put in. Basically, she's doing detective work. She's doing what a good detective would do, which is looking at all the evidence and trying to put it together and connect all those dots. You tell me that Lord Godalming and Mr. Morris are coming too. Let us be able to tell them when they come. This is my last paragraph. He accordingly set the phonograph at a slow pace, and I began to typewrite from the beginning of the 17th cylinder. I used manifold, and so took 3 copies of the diary, just as I had done with the rest. It was late when I got through, but Dr. Seward went about his work of going around of his patients. When he had finished, he came back and sat near me reading, so that I did not feel too lonely whilst I worked. How good and thoughtful he is. The world seems full of good men, even if there are monsters in it. I'm going to do one more because we can get down to Dr. Seward's diary entry at September 30th. Before I left him, I remembered what Jonathan put in his diary of the professor's perturbation at reading something in an evening paper at the station at Exeter. So seeing that Dr. Seward keeps his newspapers, I borrowed the files of the Westminster Gazette and the Pall Mall Gazette and took them to my room. I remember how much the Daily Graph and the Whitby Gazette, of which I had made cuttings, had helped us to understand the terrible events at Whitby when Count Dracula landed. So I shall look through the evening papers since then, and perhaps I shall get some new light. I am not sleepy, and the work will help to keep me quiet. Dude, check out Mina. Not only has she gone through all their papers, she said, now I'm also going to read through all the newspapers and see if there are any accounts in the newspapers that I can make sense of, like missing kids or, people disappearing during the nighttime, weird stuff like that. And she's going to try to connect all those dots as well. Really awesome job, everybody, today. We are now on the bottom of page 320. You're going to pick it up from Dr. Seward's diary of September 30th. It's set and starts with Mr. Harker arrived at 9 o'clock. He got his wife's wire just before starting. That's where you'll pick it up. So the bottom of page 320 on the online version, and you will read till 346 of the online version, or, of course, until you answer all those questions from assignment number 11. Thank you very much.